Let's take a look at a tool that you may have seen in passing but never actually used, and we're going to compare it to its counterpart and help you decide whether or not it's right for you. That's coming up. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Reese. This is Weaver Leather Supply. Today we're going to be taking a look at a draw gauge. Now, what is a draw gauge? Well, essentially it's the counterpart to a strap cutter, and this is a strap cutter from Weaver Leather Supply. It is, in my opinion, probably the best one on the market for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons I really like it is that this outside edge right here where the leather passes through, it's beveled, which means it's a lot more difficult for the leather to get caught on the strap cutter as it goes through there. It's a fantastic tool, but one of the things that all strap cutters in general, if we're talking about this type, one of the things they don't do great is cut heavy duty leather. It's fantastic for lightweight to medium weight leathers, but it's not great at heavyweight leathers. In fact, if you were to try to cut heavyweight leather, when I say heavy, I mean like 10, 12, 14 ounce and up. If you were to try to cut something like that with this, first of all, it probably wouldn't fit between the two pieces here. But second of all, if you did get it in there, because that's such a tough, heavy-duty leather, the blade that's in there would either bend or outright break. And that's not a flaw in the design. That's just how these work. They're not designed for heavy-duty leather. And that's where a draw gauge is going to come into play. I don't have the blade in it right now because I don't feel like losing an eye. You know, I tend to wave these things around while I'm talking with them. But this is perfect for cutting those heavier weight leather. If you're thinking about doing something like heavy armor for a LARP or a Renaissance festival, something like that, or maybe you're interested in making saddles, well, you're going to need some heavy duty straps to go with that thicker leather, and a draw gauge is designed to cut that heavy weight leather. So how does this thing work? There's a little slot off to the side on the left over here, and that's where our blade's going to go. There's a little tension thumb screw right here that allows us to loosen it, drop the blade down there, and tighten it back up. And that's what's going to allow us to use it just like a strap cutter, but on the heavier stuff. So before we go any further, I need to state the obvious. This blade is heavy duty and very sharp. It sticks straight up out of this tool. Don't take any chances with it. You can hurt yourself really bad if you're careless with this thing. As long as you respect it and you take precautions, you'll be fine, but this is not something to take lightly. So with the disclaimer out of the way, how do we actually use this thing? Well, the first thing that we're going to need to do is strop the blade every time we use it. It's really simple. We're going to strop it just like we would a swivel knife blade. Add the jeweler's rouge to the strop and then slide it across the leather, making sure that we don't roll it when we get to the end of the pull stroke. That's going to round off your edge. You don't want to do that. After that, we can set the width of our cut. So I want to point out something really quick. I haven't actually added the blade to the draw gauge yet. I want to set this width before I put the blade in there, again, so I don't accidentally cut myself. So how do we actually set the width of our cut? Well, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to be loosening the clamp on this bar, and it works just like a strap cutter. There's different measurements here, and we're going to slide it so that it sets to the depth, the width that we want. But there's two different designs. This particular one has a thumb screw right here that allows us to slide that back and forth. The other design, this is really cool. So this is the Master Tool draw gauge from Weaver. This particular one, I don't know, hopefully you can see that. All you have to do is just turn the handle, and then the draw gauge will slide, and then you turn it back and it locks in place, and now it's locked and it won't go anywhere. So now that we've set our width, we can go ahead and put the blade in. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to loosen up the thumb screw over here. We're going to make sure that we don't loosen it enough so that the shim comes out. If it does, it's no big deal, just put it back in there. But we're going to loosen it enough to be able to get our blade down in there. We're going to drop it down in there and tighten it up. Now the one thing I'll mention to you, the bottom half of this blade is blunt. It's like the tang on a knife. We want to drop the blade far enough down in there so that all that's exposed is the cutting edge. So we've got our width set, we've got the blade inserted, now we're ready to start cutting, right? Well, not exactly. The first thing that we're going to need to do, well, the next thing that we're going to need to do is make sure that our leather has a straight edge on it, because what's going to happen is this little sidewall right here, that's what's going to follow the edge of our leather. And if we've got a crooked piece of leather, well, we're going to end up with a crooked strap. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is just take a ruler, make sure that we've got a straight edge on our leather, and then we can start cutting. So with the draw gauge, one of the toughest parts of it, well, really the toughest part of it is just getting it started. And the way I like to do that, I'm gonna let my leather hang off one end of the table. And then I'm gonna brace on my forearm so I've got a good foundation. I'm also holding the leather so it's not going anywhere. And then I'm gonna move my draw gauge into position, making sure that it's flush against this sidewall right here. And I'm slowly gonna start pulling the draw gauge through the leather. Once I've got enough of the strap hanging out that I can get a hold of it, that's what I want to hold on to. So my left hand's going to hold the strap, my right hand is going to pull the draw gauge. So one thing I want to point out is that my hand is either beside or behind the blade. This isn't a strap cutter with a covered blade. We really want to make sure we keep our fingers away from that exposed blade as we're pulling it through the leather. So one last little tip, and that is that I'm gonna keep my eyes over here on this sidewall that essentially is the guide. If I keep my eyes on the blade and I start going crooked, well, I'm not gonna discover it until it's too late. But if I keep my eyes over here, I can see that the leather is flush against that guide, and I'll be able to detect really quickly if I'm starting to get off a little bit, and I can allow myself to correct. If I'm watching the blade, it's a lot harder to do that. So that's going to do it for this video. I will see you in the next one. In the meantime, go make something amazing.